Welcome back to another Gear Talk. It's another Thursday, and today, Chapter 3 of the Hivebusters comic out of 5. As you can tell, we're halfway through everything now. I don't really know why I open everything as you can tell, when we just started the video. Anyway, this is the halfway point to the entire comic series, and if you've seen some of the earlier videos I've done throughout the week, you can tell that as this video is coming out, the next video will be the character discussions. Last week was the Hivebuster opening kind of discussion about the Hivebusters in general. From here on out, it's talking about the characters and everyone involved. So, this chapter compared to the last few chapters isn't that heavy with action. This is actually the chapter we get a lot of backstory and a lot of history and a lot of character building amongst the three squad mates. So, let's go in and talk about Chapter 3 of the Hivebusters comics. Now, this is going to be a lot more of an easier chapter. This might be the shortest one I review. Then again, I've said that about everything when it comes to length, so take it with a grain of salt. So, we open up the comic. It's actually more of an opening, just like the first comic, really. This is a callback to a lot of things from the first chapter. So, it opens up, Mac is pretty much seeing, and you can tell it's a dream already, but he's seeing his family, he's seeing his wife, and he's seeing his son, Dylan, which is going to be like, or Dylan, depending on how you want to say the name, but Dylan, he's going to play not a major role, but he's going to be brought up quite a bit in this chapter. You see him over at the lake, his feet in the water, just hanging out and looking at his family at a stream, and then it cuts to what's actually going on. He wakes up from blacking out, noticing that his feet are in the water inside the truck he was driving, and the truck is just totaled in a riverbank. Lahni and Jeremiah see he's awake and like, "You okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine, I'm alive." And again, I'm not really like going through the very heavy lines in this comic. As you can notice, like he wasn't like, "Yeah, I'm just fine." He's going to say something else. But continuing on, he pretty much says like, "I'm good, I'm fine." And they say, "Good, like we're still a three-man team. We can continue on. We're going to have to go on foot. Where are we going?" From that point, he says, like, "Wait, like, what about the swarm just now? We were running from them, and there was the flock. What happened to the flock?" And they look at him and say they ran off. They fled. And this is where he says, like, Max says, like, "Wait a minute. You're telling me that the swarm, who we have been fighting this whole time, that have never once retreated from us, have now been like, hey, this is too much of a problem. We're going to retreat." And they say, "Yeah, like, do you think we're joking? Or, like, do you think we're lying?" He says, "No, I believe you. It's just, this is the first time this has ever happened." And both agree, like, yeah, this has never happened to us before. So they go on, and this is where we learn that I was wrong from Chapter 2, and also Chapter 1, I believe, that we are now going to Mac's actual hometown. It's called Bravelle, or Bravelle, depending how you want to state it. Croya was not his hometown. That was just one of the towns that he went to that was on his delivery route, one of his main towns he delivered to. So Croya is one of the main towns, one of the major outsider establishment that he delivered to, while Bravelle was his actual hometown, where he was actually born and where he actually had his family and where he was based. So he says, "It's right down this road. If we keep going, we're going to come there." So they begin the journey there, and that's when we start to learn more about the backstories of the three characters. We don't really learn that much about Mac in this chapter. It's subtly stated what happened to him or why he's here, but we don't know the full story as of yet. So we do learn about Jeremiah Keegan's story. So we know about Keegan. It starts with Keegan's stuff. We learn that he was Onyx Guard, and they're like, okay, we knew about the Onyx Guard part. We knew about all of that. Again, this comic came out before the Hivebusters DLC to Gears 5. So a lot of the information in here, they're hearing for the first time in this comic when it was first published. If we're going by timeline-wise, though, now that the DLC is out, they already knew he was Onyx Guard. They already knew all of this. They already saw him. He already talked about it in the DLC. But technically, these comics came out before the DLC ever did, but this comic takes place after the DLC. So you need to understand, like, their surprise for the majority of this information is because at the time it was released, they didn't know. But if you're going to take it from when they were in the middle of the DLC to the end and to the beginning of this, they already knew this stuff. So he states, like, yeah, I was Onyx Guard, and believe it or not, before everything, I worked at Halvo Bay, and I worked pretty much loading munitions. I was like a delivery boy for loading the munitions throughout the entire town. My job was to stock. He was the quartermaster pretty much. And I think in Gears 5, they even call him the quartermaster for one of his skins. So his job was pretty much making sure ammo and everything was up to code, everything was loaded, and that the weapons were ready to go to fight. But Hivebusters from Gears of War Judgment, we learned, was very heavily hit by the Swarm. Not the Swarm, the Locust. They were the Locust at the time. The Locust hit hard, and that is also where Karn plays a role. But while we have all of Judgment going on, we have Keegan having his story going on at the same time. He fought alongside the Onyx Guard there. Keep in mind, he was a COG soldier at this point, and he said right time, right place. They ended up coming in, and I helped barricade them in, keep them safe. And then when they were attacked, I was there fighting. I was taught, basic shooting, basic everything you need to be a soldier. So I assisted. I took down a few of the Locusts. And right there, he said, I was the one going back and forth between posts, reloading and helping out the Onyx Guard. That was me. I was the one doing it all. And at the end of it all, we learn that Keegan got recruited into the Onyx Guard. He didn't go to the academy and he didn't go through everything. Because I think I've said it before in a video, there are two ways to get into the Onyx Guard. You either go through the boot camp, you go through all of it, you graduate, and you become an Onyx Guard. That's kind of like the standard way of doing it, but there's also a second option. You can be recruited into the Onyx Guard. If you're a soldier that they see potential in, or you're a cut above the rest, they can say, hey, we want to bring you into the Onyx Guard. You're going to join us. I'm guessing once you join, you have to go through a bit of training there too, but it's nothing like going through the academy. It makes you wonder why Marcus wasn't chosen, or I know why Baird wasn't chosen. The Onyx Guard hated him for what he did at Hivebusters. That's why Baird wasn't chosen. But, Dom wasn't chosen, or Hoffman. Hoffman had a high standing in the COG. Dom was working pretty much, he was working behind the shadows. Not really behind the shadows, but he was more working as like a black op, pretty much. I can't even remember the name of what he was either. He was like a stormtrooper. I can't remember what Dom was off the top of my head, and that's going to piss off so many people. But Marcus, like 26th RTI, they could have easily been like, Marcus, like your history, your family lineage, join. It makes you wonder why they didn't. Maybe Adam had his hand in that one, like, no. My son wants to be a soldier, go ahead, he can be a soldier, whatever. But there is no way in hell he's joining you guys. Or I'm not going to know all the stuff he's doing, or you guys are going to go into some situation that will get him killed. So I have a feeling that's why Marcus didn't become an Onyx Guard. That's probably the reason. But yeah, we learned that Keegan got recruited in. And once he was recruited in, we learned that Keegan was, he was fighting with the Onyx for a while, but then pretty roughly, short after he got recruited, he was sent to Azura. And he was really pissed about that. He wasn't happy. The Onyx Exiles, we learned they're called. Pretty much everyone on Azura that was an Onyx Guard did nothing. They didn't really do anything until they were attacked by the Locust towards the end of the war. Then they had to step up and fight. The only problem was that the Locust threw everything they had at them. And they didn't walk away too well. There are only two listed survivors. That would be Keegan's commanding officer, who I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but when we do Keegan's video, he'll be coming up a bit. It's stated that he is alive still. And also Keegan's alive. Keegan survived also. I don't remember if they stated how he lived, but those two were the only two. Oh yeah, I remember. They barricaded themselves off, his commanding officer, and there was another scientist. I guess Keegan must have been in the room too at the time. So those are the two surviving members. And Keegan, as far as we've seen player-wise and his condition, he's the only one that's able to step up and fire a gun, a rifle, and still able to fight. So we learn about that, and we learn about how, when he went back and forth delivering, when he was still a COG soldier, he was pretty much a delivery boy. And that's when Mac's like, that's what I was. So they have that connection there they talk about, and they're just like, yeah, we did the same thing roughly. That's cool. Continuing on, they finally do make it to the outskirts of Bravelle. Before they get into it, there's one other area they come across. And this is like, there's grass growing everywhere. There's a bunch of totaled vehicles and trucks that are just in this area where everything's growing. And we learn, and I had to go back and check, this is from the first chapter. This is what Mac was seeing when he was inside of the pound. When he was pretty much cocooned in, and he was what's the right word? It's when you get put inside of like the pot. He potted. This is when he was potted, and his adrenal thing it malfunctioned, and it couldn't work. So he was starting to turn, but he was saved by Lahni. This is where he saw Lahni and Keegan fighting. This is where everything went down outside of his town. This is where the fight happened, like the last of everybody versus the swarm that attacked. And he was there fighting. And by what Lahni and Mac and Keegan say, by what they saw in that vision, which Mac was seeing too, because they were all connected, by what they were saying, this was like they were fighting heavy as hell. Apparently Mac was fighting, took down a decent amount. The entire city that was left was fighting there. They said, like, you gave it everything you had. You fought as hard as you could. Every single person here fought to the very end. And Mac said, there's like, you did everything you could. And Mac just says, like, did I? Maybe I did do everything I could, but could I have done more? Like, he's like, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, I have to move on and do what I'm here for. And then he says, like, I'm going to need a second. I'm going to need a moment. And that's when Keegan comes into Lahni, because I think Lahni was about to say something to him. But Keegan says, like, just let him be. Give him a moment. He's fine. He just needs a second to, like, take it all in. He's okay. And this is where we see Mac go to one of the trucks. And he grabs this, I believe his name is Major Howl. It's the mascot we see everywhere. He grabs this Major Howl little figurine thing, like it looks like it's like a little hand thing, and he takes it out of a truck. And when he's putting it away, it's a clear shot on his arm. He has the tattoo of Major Howl on his arm. So that's probably going to play a role in one of the next 2 chapters coming up. It definitely plays a little bit of a role on what's going to end this. So he grabs it, he puts it away in his little pack, and he returns to the group and he says, okay, I'm fine. Let's continue on. I'm good. Bravelle is coming up right here. And they continue on, and then you see Bravelle. And I kid you not, compared to Croya looks like they just built all of like random scrap wood and everything into a city. Croy is an actual built damn town. The houses are like good looking houses. Everything is built well. Like this place is really nice actually. And they see and they're like, that's actually a really nice town. This is like a good place. And he's like, yep, this is where I'm from. It was pretty nice. You know, we did good. And they start to make their way into the town, and Lahni says, like, hey, you know, like, once the swarm are taken care of, once this war is over, you know, you can probably come back here. Like, there's nothing stopping you from living here again. Everything's cleaned out. You can live your life again. He says, like, Max says, there's no point. Like, why would I want to live here anymore? Everything that made this home is gone. This isn't my home anymore. Like, everything I had, my family, all of it's gone. He doesn't directly say his family, but you can very much assume by what's been seen so far in the chapter and what's coming up. He says, this is not my home anymore. Nothing here is my home. So they start to make their way into town, and they come across a house on the left-hand side, and they've already walked into the town and everything, and he says, hold up. Like, can you guys just wait here for a moment? I need to take care of something inside. This is what Max says. And Keegan says, yep, take your time. Go ahead. So 2 different things happen at this point. We'll start off with Mac. Mac goes into the house, and it's very, very clear. And it's a nice house, too. Like, not a mansion or anything, but a nice house. It's very clear this is Mac's house. And it's very clear this is where his wife and his son lived. It's very apparent when they go in. You can see it on the artwork. And he makes his way through, and he's looking around. And he goes into a room, and it's Dylan's room. It's Dylan. It says above the bed on a poster. It's a bunch of kid stuff everywhere. It looks like a normal kid's room you'd see nowadays. This is his son's room, and he takes the Commander Howl little object he had and puts it on a little charger on the side, and it starts charging. He picks up this book, and it's a Commander Howl. Like, Commander Howl's everywhere around this room. It's very apparent Dylan was a fan of Commander Howl. And it's like a wolf wearing a military helmet just squaring up to fight. He picks up this book, and he's got it. And we learn later on he puts it in his bag, and he's going to bring it with him. So that's what Mac is doing. Mac is, like, taking care of a few things, grabbing some stuff. It's his old home where Dylan lived. So, you know, he's carrying some stuff on. He's having some processing time. While that's going on, you learn that Lahni and Keegan are talking outside, and now it's Lonnie's turn to talk about her past. Now, again, we get a bit of this in the Hivebusters DLC, we do, but this one flows a lot easier because she talks about it like, you know, even though they knew, like, people knew still that some locusts did live after Adam's machine, which I kind of called in the video years ago. But she talks about it, and it flows a lot easier than Keegan's. And she says, like, yeah, like, I was a part of a group, the Brash Brigade, I think it's called. I probably butchered it. I'm sorry. Lahni's, don't worry, I'll clean it up on Lahni's video. And she says, I was a part of that group, and our job was to go around, and we killed off the remaining locusts. And Keegan's like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, you really, they sent out groups to do that, like actual squads. And she said, yeah, that's what I did. I went out, and I was a part of my squad. We went out, took care of the locusts, the swarm. No, it was the locusts still. We took care of the last of the locusts and cleaned the rest of it off for the world, and that's what we did. And Keegan's like, so you're telling me that you just went out, like the age you are now compared to when you enlisted, you would have been young, like, and they sent you guys? And she pretty much states it like, look, yeah, we were young. We were all young. We were all very young. I think they said Lahni was 19 when she was a part of this, going out and fighting off, like, the last of the locusts. But she says, like, understand, like, I was trained to fight this enemy that, like, almost killed mankind. None of us were rookies. I was trained to go out and do this. I was 19, but I had experience to fight these guys like every other soldier before me. Yeah, I wasn't in the war that, you know, the human versus locust war. I wasn't in it, but I was there cleaning up. I was fighting an enemy that was made to kill off all of humanity. I was trained to do it. They taught me how to fight them. And she said I would go out, and we did that. That was what our mission was. Yeah, like, we were all young, but the COG were easily sending people in their 18, the moment they hit 18, out into the war. And we see that with Benjamin. They did that with Ben. Yeah, the birthing camps, they were literally birthing people to go and do that in the future, but the war didn't go on that long. It went on for a while, but not long enough where the after effects of that could be seen, how that turned out. But she said, like, that's what we did. Like, it brought us all together. We were like a family. Like, we fought something that killed humanity. Well, most of humanity. And he says, like, that really bonds people. And she's like, yeah, now you know why I want to go back. Because that's what she asked Hoffman for. Her thing was she wanted to go back to her squad. She wanted to go back to them out of prison and join up with them again. So after that's done, Matt comes out of the house, and he's like, okay, I'm all good. We're clear. They said, okay, you okay? You want to keep going? He's like, yep, I'm fine. Let's continue. And again, the swarm have not popped up yet at all. From there on, they continue going, and you get this nice scene of where they're traveling through the town, and he's leading them, and he's like, this way, and they're going to the barricade, the depot barricade kind of thing where, like, everything was. It's this big, like, I knew the word before I even started the video, but I forgot it. It's this big door, and they go in. It's pretty much like a big, giant depot, pretty much. And they get there, and everything opens up. He wires a few things, but the door's open. So he rewired stuff, doors can open. And they ask, well, like, this place has obviously been abandoned for a while. Like, how did you guys, like, how's it opening? And he says, well, the town's been running on the waterfall's power line for a while. We kept the power going so that houses and the lights in houses were going, and the power in the town was going, and that the doors were able to open and close. That's all we kept the power going for. So he obviously rerouted the power to the door. But he said, we still had power. Like, we weren't just living around just like Stone Age level, like we somewhat saw with how Kate's village lived. Like, they were okay, but they weren't living like how Mac's village was living. And they say, like, pretty resourceful, and he's like, well, yeah, like, what else were we supposed to do? So the doors open, and you easily see the swarm have taken this place over. They've got the tendrils and everything. I think they see a pod at one point, and he says, like, yeah, they've already started. This is definitely where they're coming from, like we figured. And they go in, and he says, well, how deep does this place go? And this is where Max says, well, as far as I know, it goes down 10 levels. We raided and scavenged 1 through 7. That's how much we went through, and we didn't see any sign of anything. So he said, if they are here, which they obviously are, they must have been deeper. So I either took this as, like, they knew there were 10 levels, but they only scavenged 1 through 7, but they've went through the other 3, or they never looked at 8 through 10, and they saw what were there. So it's either deeper than 10, or it goes to 10, but they never looked at 8, 9, and 10. So they go through, and they're looking, and they're like, yeah, this is definitely where we got to get set up and ready. They throw their weapons down, and they get the adrenal masks on, and they're ready. And you see snatchers coming out and ready to take them. And they're just like, yep. Okay, this is showtime, everybody. And obviously the Snatchers come, they toss Lahni down, and they're looking around. And this is where Lahni says, hey, Mac, I'm going to see you on the other side. And then you get these nice 4 images of the Snatchers slowly taking Mac and taking him in. And he's just like, and you get like pretty much a speech bubble, but it's on the side because it's going to be for the next one. He's like, see you on the other side. And that's where chapter 3 ends. And I gotta say, there was no real action going on, but if I had to name like the best moments between everyone, it was these 3 having a conversation. Because there are times where Mac and Keegan butt heads, but not in a bad way. Lonnie's playing the peacemaker, and you really get like the backstories of everybody. I have a feeling the next chapter, since we're going back to that pseudo hive realm kind of thing where they're connected in a hive mind, I believe we're probably going to get Mac's backstory on what happened. But yeah, I thought this was a good chapter. Like, no fighting, but you really don't need fighting in every chapter in order to like get the story. Yeah, we had Swarm in the last like page or 2, but it was still good. Like, I still enjoyed learning everyone's history, and you get a bit more in-depth from them. So that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank the patrons for making this possible. Thank everyone for making this possible. I'll see you guys in the next video. Catch you later. See ya.